Alright, hello everyone and welcome to AEW Discussion. I'm your host and AEW enthusiast Dougie Tug. In today's episode, I'm going to be discussing Dynamite May June 14th, 2023 episode. So Adam Cole and MJF find themselves on a collision course in regards to a AEW World Championship match. And on this episode of Dynamite, there would be a championship or a world title eliminator match, which I don't really get the premise of this match. Granted, it works if the person competing in the match is not somebody who's in line for a title match, but Adam Cole is very clearly in line for a title match, so why would you bother booking an eliminator match in the first place? But the way it was booked, the end, or the way the match was booked, the ending, probably about the best way you could have gone about that. And yeah, with that, so we'll go ahead and get into this episode of AEW Discussion. We'll go ahead and get right into the action. Starting with said World Championship Eliminator match. So Adam Cole had 30 minutes to defeat MJF and earn himself a shot at the AEW World Championship, and he fell short by about 1 second as the clock ran out. So MJF pulled out every underhanded method that he could in an attempt to win, but it was his ability to stall and buy time that would ultimately play into his favor. Cole appeared to injure his arm in the middle of the match and continued to nurse it throughout, so it'll be interesting to see if indeed that is a legitimate injury or a K-fob injury. And given the way the match ended, which was a draw, I expect the rematch to happen after Forbidden Door, as it was announced MJF would have a different opponent for that pay-per-view, defending the World Heavyweight title against Things. Didn't get a bit unwieldy down the stretch in this match as competitors attempted to drag things out to hit the time limit. But this was still a strong match to start the show, and it got the crowd red hot, so pretty good way to start the show. Darby Allin, Sting, Orange Cassidy, and Keith Lee versus Mogul Embassy. So the match was pure, unadulterated fun with fast-paced action that highlighted all involved. Strickland, well, he's been having some issues with Orange Cassidy and Keith Lee, and he also has a history with Darby Allin, so that mutual disdain for Swerve makes some sense as to why this goodness, as to what brought these good guys together, or what brought these guys together. So Sting picking up the win, harmless, he's a legend, and he's also not competing every single week or getting unnecessary wins every single week, so when he does beat somebody, it's not really that big of a deal, and also too, he allows him to build some momentum ahead of whatever awaits him. And Darby Allin with regards to JAS, as Sammy Guevara appears poised to be breaking away from the Jericho Appreciation Society, and Jericho, well, he's not going to let that happen. He's not going to just let Sammy Guevara go, so instead he proposes a tag team match next week, and Darby Allin, who really had no business being in that segment, was there for a sole purpose of setting up a tag team match next week, so AEW could have that unique moment of Sting versus Jericho in a ring. So there is that. But overall, this match was good, fun stuff from all involved, and probably won't be remembered or recalled beyond this show, but it doesn't need to be. And then the match would have concluded with a trios match, Elite versus Blackpool Combat Club, and this match would write the latest chapter in the rivalry between these factions, but what came after completely overshadowed anything that happened between the ropes, which was the Elite picking up a win. So hey, Elite finally gets a win. So first you had the return of Eddie Kingston, who won after Castagnoli ahead of his, he went after Castagnoli, who's the Ring of Honor World Champion. Those two apparently are going to be competing for the Ring of Honor World title. Also an interesting little interaction between Moxley and Kingston as well too. They didn't quite come to blows, but they certainly had some issues. And then you had the arrival of Konosuke Kateshka, the return of Kenny Omega, and the surprise appearance of Will Ospreay. So the latter led to a solid show closing beatdown that put some heat on one of the marquee bouts of the Forbidden Door pay-per-view. With that said, too much might have happened here in the span of about 5 minutes. Kingston's return should have meant more. Takeshita kind of got tossed aside in favor of Ospreay. And that is certainly the risk that you kind of run when you throw too much into one segment and not let anything breathe. Now, some will argue that an action-packed finale will help the company build momentum entering a significant period for the company, but not allow important developments to take the spotlight that they need to be considerable deals or something to be remembered. It can certainly ruin the impact of those moments. So, yeah, I think ultimately just kind of spacing things out, probably the way to go rather than just throwing in a bunch of people in chaos in the show closing segment. It works if it's a brawl, but when it's a whole bunch of individual things happening at once, you kind of need to space everything out so that way one thing doesn't overshadow the other thing and take away from the impact of that thing. So a lot happened on the show. It started with a strong 30-minute match between Cole and MJF and ended in a draw. Sammy Guevara appears poised under the Jericho Appreciation Society, likely setting up a feud between Jericho and Guevara, which certainly could make for some good television. Although getting the crowd to cheer for Sammy, that might be easier said than done. Wardlow and Luchasaurus are going to clash over the TNT Championship on the first episode of Collision. On paper, that looks like a solid matchup. The build to that match has not been solid. And Willow Nightingale, once again, in the path of the outcast, and, well, the booking of the women's division appears to be going in circles. But it was nice to see Sky Blue get a title opportunity, even if she had no shot at winning. And that was all before the main event segment that jam-packed way too much into a small window. Now, Tony Khan, you look at the history of AEW, has a tendency to do this, throwing too many matches and angles into a given show, and as a result, important developments get overlooked. Yes, Forbidden Door is coming up. Yes, the company presents its first episode of Collision this Saturday. Yes, All In is coming up after Forbidden Door in August, and the company certainly does have their work cut out for that pay-per-view. But having too much happen in a short period of time, but having too much happen in a short period of time, or having the things that are happening for AEW at the moment, with Forbidden Door, with Collision, with All In, so having those kind of things all happening in a short period of time, destined to create some booking overload, but it's still on Tony Khan and the creative team to kind of decide what needs to happen on this week's show, and when, rather than throwing everything out there all at once and hoping that everything sticks, everything is remembered, and nothing gets overshadowed or forgotten. Wednesday show is a good one, with a lot to like, but there is a fine line when it comes to moving forward in terms of accentuating what needs to be accentuated and backing off angles and segments that can wait a week or two. There were probably some things that could have waited a week or two in that last segment. I was more curious to see how things would play out between Moxley and Kingston. I think that's definitely a bigger angle to highlight. You could have done something with Ospreay and Omega at the cash. Probably could have saved that for next week. Those three guys gotta save it for next week, maybe. I don't know. It wasn't all bad. It wasn't like it was a terrible closing segment, but there was just simply too much happening at once for any one particular thing to stand out. And with that, so we go and wrap up this episode of AEW Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.